Absolutely nothing beats windshield time. Welcome back to Dan the Road Trip Guy, a podcast where we have candid conversations about life lessons learned on the road. I'm your host, Bimmer enthusiast and road trip extraordinaire, Dan Neal. And now, on to the show. Well, my guest today, I just saw him 2 weeks ago. We see each other the first or second week of May each year for the last several years on One Lap of America. I'm excited to talk to Enrique Ramirez about cars and road trips, his battle with cancer. And so I hope you'll stick around till the end where he shares some real positive thoughts on living life to its fullest. And so let's get started on a virtual road trip right now. Welcome to the show, Enrique.
Yes, happy to be here. Thank you so much, Dan, for having me. I've been listening to your podcast for a while and really enjoyed, so glad to be able to be a part of it.
Yeah, and I'm glad you're a part of it. I like to start my show typically giving my guest a few minutes to say just who they are. For racers, I usually say, we'll take a warm-up lap around your favorite track, and I know you're very familiar with Road America, so we'll take a warm-up lap in your favorite car around Road America, and you can tell my listeners just who is Enrique.
Well, my warm-up lap would have been my favorite car that I owned, which was a Camaro SS1LE 2018, and I did, only had it for a short period of time, but all the miles I had were basically at Road America and at other racetracks.
Oh, cool.
So it was a beast. But my background, so I started kind of as an IT guy, but I was always into cars, and that passion of cars and racing and through the One Lap brought me to Road America, where I was a director of business services, handled all kinds of track rental stuff, hospitality, corporate groups, schools, over 900 activities every year that went on at the track. I had my hand in. But more importantly, I think from that is the fact that, I'm a father, a grandfather, a husband, a brother. My wife and I, we've been married 23 years. We have 7 kiddos, 2 that I had from a previous marriage that are older, 2 biological, and 3 that we adopted.
Oh, that's great.
So our passion was always kids, and we always did a lot of fundraising for Save the Children and other children's charities. But that's kind of who I am. I care about a lot of things. I care about a lot of people, and cars and racing, and the people in that community have been a big part of my life.
Yeah, you mentioned One Lap, and that's where we met. And you told me last night you've been out there for 14 times, I believe.
Yes. This year was my 14th One Lap, with the first one having been in 1999 with my wife, who was at the time my girlfriend. And after we did the One Lap, and she was willing to do it again the next year, I said, I better marry this girl because there aren't very many out there like this.
Yeah, and as you and I know, if you can spend 7 days in a car with somebody, yeah, there's probably something going on there.
Yeah, you bet. So we actually got married April 15th in 2000, and then 2-3 weeks later, we're on the One Lap again, kind of our honeymoon.
Yeah, that's cool. And this year, your son was competing also in One Lap.
Yeah, so this is my son Eric, his 3rd year. So his first year, he did it with me, and he did it with Randy and Neil, Simon, myself, in my Cayenne, which ended up being kind of like the fallback vehicle. So that was the first time he had done it. And then in 22, he decided he was going to do it by himself in his car. So he brought a friend and did it in his car. And this is his 3rd year doing it. So I'm kind of happy that I've passed on that. I could say that I've handed off the reins to him to continue on this One Lap legacy.
Yeah, that's great. And yeah, he was enjoyable to chat with a few times. I got to talk to him. So this is Dan the Road Trip Guy. So we'll talk about cars, but we'll talk about some other things too. But tell me about your first car, your first ever car.
Well, the first car that I drove that was kind of a family car. It's kind of funny because it was a Nissan Central station wagon that my parents had, and I basically drove that into the ground. But it was a manual, it was a 4-speed manual, tiny little engine. Like I said, I drove it into the ground. I used to do the handbrake turns with it and learned all kinds of car control stuff with it. And then my first car that I ended up getting myself was '86 GTI.
Okay.
So a Mark II GTI, and that was the first car that I had that I, did some more, started getting more into the car scene and stuff. And that was, so I did junior high and high school in Guadalajara. So, I was born in California. My dad was from Mexico, my mother's from Costa Rica. They met in California. My brothers and I were born there in California. But then a few years later, when I was about 13, parents decided they were going to retire and move to Mexico. So they bought a house in Guadalajara, and we moved there, and I did junior high and high school there. So that's where I learned how to drive, which was interesting because you could drive a little bit earlier. I started driving, 12, 13, and then I was still in, I think it was in 8th grade, and I there were times when I drive myself to school. And, it's just a culture thing there where, you didn't really you needed a license, but if you didn't have one, there were other ways around it.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So you did you then leave there after high school and come to the U.S., or what did you do after high school?
Yes. So after high school, I moved to Houston, and then, college and work there. And, I think we talked about it a little bit when we talked last, that I actually, went to school to become a programmer, a computer programmer. And, back in those days, it was COBOL and RPG2 and all these antiquated languages nowadays. Everything's so graphical and it seems so much easier to me when I look at the stuff they're using now to program than what we were doing, with this COBOL stuff and RPG and all these different languages. I did get into C++ and some of the other newer things as we went along, but I did have one regret, is that I didn't stick with the COBOL, because the first job I had was moving a system from an archaic language to another archaic language, RPG to COBOL. I just realized at that point that wasn't what I wanted to do my whole life. So I moved into more of the networking side of things and security. That kind of carried me through.
Yeah, it was funny. I don't know why I even asked you this. When we were on one lap, I was like, oh, what did you do professionally? I knew you were at Road America, but prior to that, and you brought up COBOL, and it was like, oh my gosh. And because I wrote a lot of COBOL code in the day. And it was interesting. I think I was talking to your son, or it was somebody young on the trip, and they're in tech. And they commented on a friend of theirs is actually writing COBOL code today. And I'm like, what? And so I looked that up, and there's, I guess, still a huge demand for COBOL programmers.
Yep. Like I was saying, that's one of my regrets, especially with the whole Y2K thing. Probably could have made a lot of money if I had stuck with it back then.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we'll get to a little more on professional life in a little bit. But growing up, so you were in Mexico some. Did you take any what I would consider epic road trips? We know one lap's an epic road trip. Any other trips in your lifetime that just stick out in your mind, and it was just one of those that you'll just never forget, and you could do it again tomorrow?
Well, fortunately, growing up, our summers were spent on the road with my parents. Usually cousins or uncles. We'd always find places to go, and we had an RV, and we would load up. My dad was on disability because he had been hit by a drunk driver. So when we were off school, he wasn't working, so we could load up, and we would travel 2 months down, all the way down the coast of Mexico. We'd go all the way down to Oaxaca, uh, visit family, and I mean, many of those trips were adventures. One time we took like a fishing boat down with us, and there was always anytime we took a trailer, it was an adventure.
Mm.
With that one trailer, the ball on the hitch came off, and my mom was driving. She was used to driving with the trailer, so when she felt it drop, she slammed the brake. Well, the boat slammed into the back of the RV,
Oh no.
and then she let go of the brake, and it pulled, and then she hit the brake again, and it slammed it again until finally, we're able to get stopped. And the damage wasn't too bad, but you're in Mexico, somewhere out in the middle of nowhere, and we would just have to do roadside repairs, and my dad was very clever with stuff like that. And we'd fix it and we'd move on. And then on another one of those long camping trips, we had a small luggage trailer behind the RV, but it was so full that the tongue broke. It actually cracked. The RV, the trailer popped back and it was scraping, so we had to stop. And we're kind of in a bad, area. Some people stopped and said, "You guys need to get this fixed and get to the next city. You don't want to be stuck out here, with when it gets dark." So my dad basically took the trailer apart. We took everything out of the trailer and put it in the RV. So we had gotten the luggage trailer so we'd have a more comfortable ride in the RV without as much stuff. And we ended up all crammed in the RV, sitting up in the front, like five of us up very, very up front. And everything else was packed in with all the stuff at the RV, everything with the trailer and all the stuff that was in it.
Oh wow. That's a fun story. Yeah.
So there's a lot of, I mean, I could go on forever with those road trips.
Hmm.
Tire coming off on a mountain road and, between Puerto Vallarta and Manzanillo, and being stuck out there, and a Coca-Cola truck giving my dad a ride to get a tow truck. And yeah, I mean, it's being stopped by the federal police for, they just had inspections set up, and then having an aunt along who's kind of a smart ass, and she's like, "Oh, we don't have anything but guns and drugs." She thought it was funny. They didn't think it was funny.
Yeah. Yeah. You typically just keep your mouth shut, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. What's your what's your most memorable one lap that sticks out in your mind?
Boy, I think memorable. I think because it was the biggest challenge was in 2004 when we had to go all the way out to California to Infineon Raceway in Sonoma. We were, there were three of us in an STI, and we had it better than a lot of people, or just two people. But you talk about getting tired and hallucinating and getting to the point where you can't even see straight, and that's really the first time that I experienced fatigue to that level. And just accomplishing that and finishing that, and that was huge, and it was the highest we'd ever finished. I think we finished like 12th overall
Oh wow.
in a pretty much bone stock STI. So I thought that was a pretty rewarding event because again it was so challenging. But every one lap there's stories and
Sure.
adventures, and it wasn't until 2012 that I actually won class. We won mid price. So that was also pretty memorable event. I mean, I'd gotten a lot of seconds and thirds, and 12s and 13s and 14s overall, but winning class, and then last year finally getting a top 10 with Randy, that was awesome.
Yeah, and if people don't fully understand one lap, they won't understand some of that. But it's a grueling week on the road and on the track.
Yes, and the best thing about the one lap though are the friends I've made, the people I've met. I've done the event with probably 10, 15 different people, and I think it speaks highly that we all still get along and we all still get together. And actually, one of my friends that I did the one lap with several times, Greg Hagopian, he's flying up to see me here next week. So we haven't seen each other in a few years, so it's going to be good to be able to catch up. But yeah, I did three one laps with Greg.
Wow.
Yeah, it's an amazing event, and I think the best part of the one lap are the in between track sessions when you're hanging out at the track, talking to people. You just get to meet all people from all different walks of life. It doesn't matter, they could be a billionaire, they could be, putting their car together out of spare parts, junkyard parts. It doesn't matter. Everyone gets along. Everyone's a car person. Everyone loves being there. So that's, for me, the most enjoyable part of the one lap.
Just keeps bringing me back. I don't compete, but get to ride around with Brock for a week, so that's always fun.
Well, that's got to be an adventure in itself.
It is. And we've become really good friends. We didn't even know each other in 2006. So you talked a little bit about you got into tech. Was there a particular reason you went down that path, or?
Well, we always, as kids, we had, when the Commodore 64 came out, we had that, and we always had some sort of tech in our home, and I'd always been interested. So it was easy for me to get into that and do well. I was good at getting certifications, so that was always important because the companies I worked for always wanted to be certified providers of whoever, Cisco, Microsoft, whatever the name was at the time, and I was always good at going and getting those certifications and being able to represent, the company and fill in those roles and those needs. So, and then the other thing that really helped me is that I was a tech person who is a people person, which is don't always go hand in hand. I could fill roles that were customer facing, and I could always fill that gap between the technical folks and the customer. And I attended a lot of meetings, just supported folks that way with being able to translate tech to management and to leadership roles and do that. And that was kind of my thing, my niche, I guess, that I found. So I did fairly well. And then I decided that I was IT director for a hospice in Arizona. My wife was getting tired of the heat, and we're looking to move closer to Road America because I love this place. So we bought a franchise for insurance restoration work.
Okay.
And moved to Wisconsin and started up this company from zero. But the nice thing about doing a franchise is that they give you the map basically on how to do things. So I went from IT to cleaning up flooded homes and homes that were damaged by fire. Also cleaning up trauma, suicides, unattended deaths, all kinds of nastiness, basically.
Oh, wow. Never think about some of that. And then you made a jump over to Road America at some point.
Yes. So, I met George Brugetz. He used to run the one lap for years, and he was a president of Road America, and we became pretty good friends. So I'd come out here every once in a while, help him at different events, and when a position opened up as a business services manager, he asked if I'd be interested, and I jumped at the opportunity to come work at a racetrack. Yeah.
Who wouldn't jump at that, right?
Oh, it's amazing. And I still go out there. I've been on disability now for a couple of years, but I still try to go out on the weekends and just visit and hang out with people. And I've made such great friends with the customers that rented the track and racers and all kinds of different people. That's how I met Randy, actually, Randy Pope. So was there at the track. So it was an amazing opportunity and very thankful that I had it.
So here's a question for you. If you could head out today on a road trip with anybody, and we'll say living or deceased, who would that be? Where might you go? And even what would you drive?
It's kind of funny. I spent some time thinking about that, and there's so many people out there that I think would be wonderful to have a road trip with. The car person in me and the people person. I would love to have like a nice long road trip with someone like Jay Leno, and just learn about him and where he came from and where his passion for cars came from and why he has such an eclectic collection. What draws him to those and you get some of that on his shows and his YouTube channel and all that, but just be able to sit with him and talk about that stuff, I think would be amazing. And it's one of my things I'd still like to do is go visit him and see his garage. I'm trying to work the angles and the friends and anyone to see if someone's out there listening, they can get me in to visit Jay Leno. I'm in.
Yeah, well, we'll hope so, and maybe that'll happen for sure. That'd be a fun trip.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what would we drive? I'd probably want to drive something like his Stanley Steamer or his jet car. Something absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah. Where do you think you'd go? You think you'd drive across the country or just take a nice afternoon drive around Wisconsin?
I think I would want to do like the Pacific Coast Highway or something. He's out in California, so just head north.
Yeah, there you go. That would be fun. A lot of people listening to this, and you could share whatever you'd like, but you've been in a battle with cancer for a number of years. So don't know if you could talk about that, and you just offer some words of encouragement to people who battle cancer or other life-threatening diseases. So like I said early on, there's something about you whenever I see you at One Lap, which is 1 week out of the year, there's just this positiveness that rolls off you. And it's hard to describe in words, and I think people will get it. But anyway, if you could just share a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So in 2018, it's kind of interesting because I've been having some hip pain, and I thought, working on the cars, I'd done something, but it'd been going on for a while. And in March of 18, my dad passed away, and we were down in Arizona for the services and everything. And my oldest daughter's a doctor, and she was there, and we talked about it. She's like, you should go get some scans done. There's just something. She just got a bad feeling about it. So when I got back, I went and got some scans done, and they found that I had a tumor on my pelvis. So they did a biopsy, and it came back renal cell, which is kidney. So then they did another scan, and they checked my kidney, and I had a tumor on my left kidney. So basically, I went in and they removed my left kidney and part of my pelvis. Had to kind of learn to walk again a little bit, because where they removed that section of the pelvis is where all the muscles from your legs and glutes and stuff attached to an anchor. So they have to do this weird thing where they tie the muscles in together. And so it was this whole thing, and they didn't see anything anywhere else. So they're like, well, hopefully we got it, and that's not going to be another issue. So you go on a regimen of scans, right? You get scanned first every 90 days, and then every 6 months to make sure nothing's popping up. So in one of those scans, they started to see some spots popping up on my pelvis now on the other side. So they weren't big enough, so we're monitoring. They did it, another 90 days, another scan, a little bit bigger. Like, all right, let's try to do a biopsy. So they did a biopsy. They couldn't get anything, definitive. So like, wait another 90 days. They do that, go back, do another scan, do another biopsy, and it turns out that it's some sort of leukemia. And they're like, well, it's an acute leukemia. So right away they send me into the hospital to start this aggressive arsenic treatment. And the doctor does all this blood work and bone marrow, does everything, all these tests, and everything comes back negative. So he's like, that can't be right. You can't have leukemia if it's not in your blood. So I was in the hospital for a day, and they sent me home. I'm like, okay. They said, we're going to wait another 90 days. We'll do another scan, another biopsy. So they wait another 90 days, go in, do the biopsy, and it comes back for the acute leukemia again. So back I go to the hospital. And this time I was there for 28 days because this arsenic trioxide chemo they give you for this leukemia, it's like only a quarter of the people can take it. So they have to have you in the hospital with heart monitors and everything to make sure that the chemo doesn't kill you. because that's the kind of stuff it is. So it did, remarkably, it didn't affect me. In fact, when I was in the hospital for 28 days, I was working remotely. I was given free reign. I would go down to the cafeteria, get food. I probably put on like 10, 15 pounds, which you don't think, right? You're in the hospital.
Right.
But I couldn't do anything. They had bicycles, stationary bikes in a couple of the hallways, and I'd go sit on those. But I was just bored to death. And it was right in the middle of COVID. So this was 2019 and 2020. So no visitors, nothing. Once I got through those 28 days, they sent me home, and I had 6 months of treatment that was outpatient. So I'd go in, I'd do 4 weeks of treatment, Monday through Friday, 3-hour infusion, and then I'd get 2 weeks off. And towards the end of that, my neck had been bothering me, and I kept telling them my neck was sore, my neck was sore. And they're like, well, it must just be because you're in here on this chair, uncomfortable. Towards the end of the treatment, the pain in my neck got so bad that my wife tried to get me into our vehicle to take me to the hospital, and I just couldn't do it. It just hurt. So I called an ambulance. They picked me up, took me to the hospital. They do x-rays and scans, and it turns out I have a tumor in my neck that fractured 2 vertebrae.
Huh.
So I had 2 fractured vertebrae in my neck. And somehow, I didn't get paralyzed or whatever. I mean, if I'd done something, it probably could have been pretty serious. So they immediately shipped me to the main hospital in Milwaukee. 3-4 days later, they went in and they put in 2 titanium plates and 10 screws and fused my neck from C1 to C5. And then they couldn't really do anything other than a biopsy on the tumor. And it turns out that it was kidney cancer again.
Oh, wow.
So the kidney cancer spread to my neck, which the kidney cancer it likes to spread. It's very aggressive. And usually it's like the bones and the brain. So fortunately, it's not affected my brain, but so had that happen there. And then they started me right away on an immunotherapy treatment, which pretty much worked for about a year and a half or 2. And then the latest scans started showing, spots popping up again.
Sure.
Metastases on my spine and on my pelvis and a couple of other places. And the tumor in the neck was started to progress. So they did, I went to New York to Memorial Sloan Kettering and had some radiation done on the neck to kind of slow that down. And that was in January this year. And then the scans in this past March, they basically continue to spread. So we're on like the 4th or 5th treatment. I've done 2 rounds of radiation, 2 surgeries, and there's like the 4th different chemo that I'm on. And, the doctors in March basically said that they're hoping if I can get a good year out of this treatment, then that's good. So we're just kind of running out of options. But what I tell people is that, through the whole process, I just show up every day. I do what I need to do. I haven't let myself get into a funk. I still try to live my life. Last year was kind of my bucket list year. Did 4 weeks in Europe, did an IndyCar, Formula One race in Austria, did Italy, Germany, Austria. I went to Costa Rica, was in Mexico like 3 or 4 times. I refuse to give in, and I'm just too damn stubborn to give up.
Yeah. Well, good for you. I mean, a lot of people probably would just give up. I think you told me 5% of people. So you told me something about 5% on one lap.
Yeah. Well, kidney cancer. So the 5-year survival rate for kidney cancer is like 8%.
Okay.
Yep. And I am, it's funny, May 25th will be the 5th anniversary of my surgery, my kidney pelvis surgery.
Okay. All right. So you're just going to keep racing. Racing through life, we'll say.
I'm just going to keep going until I just can't anymore. So,
yeah, good for you.
Things get harder. I mean, as you know, this year with the 1 lap, it was probably the hardest one I've done. there were a couple of long legs. Well, I missed one of them uh, at the end just because of, I ended up in the hospital in Texas when we were at Eagles Canyon Raceway. We left Nashville and I had some pain, and we took off to Dallas. That was 700 miles. We got to the hotel 2, 3 in the morning. I was still hurting, just like it's like a stomach abdomen pain. And in the morning, when it hadn't gone away, I just asked them. Luckily there was a hospital 2 miles from the hotel. I'm like, you guys need to drop me off and then go to the track. So they did, and it turns out I had pancreatitis. So they kind of flushed me out, and I had the guys take off. So I went to an uncle's house in Dallas, spent the night there, and then Friday caught a plane to South Bend, Indiana, and made it to the end of the event.
Yeah.
And even decided to jump into the car and drive the skid pad because I wanted to make sure we won our class.
Yeah.
And
You finished well. Yes.
yes, yes, it's funny. Randy has an allergy or an aversion to skid pads. We
Yeah.
don't know why. He's so excellent at driving and doing everything else, as he put on display on the skid pad for the drifting. But he just can't get those G's, hit the G number
Yeah.
and doing the skid pad. So I'm like, let me do it. We were tied for first, but losing because of our time. So we needed to beat the car in our class to win the class. So
Yeah.
we did.
What I don't recall what G's you pulled on the skid pad.
Not very many, but it was enough. It was like 0.9. I think the highest I pulled was 0.92, average to like 0.91.
Yeah. Hey,
But that car was just so heavy.
yeah, that was a heavy car. So,
Yeah, yeah.
but yeah, congratulations. You guys did really
Thank
well.
you.
Yeah.
It was a comeback the whole week. We started out, we were last in class and like almost 60th overall.
Yeah. I think Brock was giving Randy a hard time about the skid pad because he took the van out and beat Randy
Yeah, he
with the
beat him
minivan.
in the wet skid pad. He did. But guess what? I beat him in the dry.
Yeah, that's great. That's good.
Yeah, yeah. Well, what's funny is he did it he took the Hellcat out and did the skid pad.
Oh, okay. I missed that. I was in the back putting
Yeah,
awards together. So,
yeah, yeah. He actually took the Hellcat out and did the skid pad, and I mean he might have had a little more moisture on the track. That was his excuse.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's always something to blame when you're a racer, right?
That's right. That's right.
Can't be the guy sitting behind the wheel.
Nope.
Hey, well, we'll wrap this up. And man, I've just really enjoyed this and catching up with you again. We get to see each other once a year, and this is fun. If you could leave people with one thing about living life, because you certainly have done that and still doing it even through these trials of cancer. But if you could leave us all with just one thing, what would that be?
Tomorrow is never guaranteed, so you need to live every day as if it's your last. Don't leave things for tomorrow. If there's a trip you want to take it. If there's a car you want to get it. If there's a friend you haven't talked to in a while, call them. There's so many things. I think we live life with too many regrets and I should have, could have, would have. Just stop it and just do it. And by the way, I'm planning on heading to the East Coast to visit my brother. And there's two of the lower 48 states that I've not been to, which are Rhode Island and Maine. And I plan on going there sometime this summer. So as I'm driving through Ohio, we're going to get together if you're available.
I'll be right here. So you just look me up. You've got my number. And I sometimes you mentioned your bucket list earlier, and so I'll circle back to that real quick. Is there anything besides those two states left on your bucket list?
Well, fortunately, I've been able to spend a lot of time with family, and that's always high on my list. But I think the main one that I'm working on, like I said, is a visit to Jay Leno and his garage.
All right.
That would be, I wanted to do a Formula One race in Europe, and I did that. Visiting Italy, and yeah, I mean, I think if I could get that accomplished, that I'd be pretty happy.
Yeah. Well, maybe somebody will share this podcast with him. I don't know. We'll see. Hey,
Yeah.
I do wrap up giving my guests the opportunity to promote a cause, a business, whatever that might be. So I'll throw that back to you too, and just tell people.
Well, the only thing really I would have would, support cancer charities out there. There are a lot of, I support the American Cancer Society. And if anybody wanted to support our efforts, they can do so by going to runsignup.com/ENRRAM1. Again, it's runsignup.com/NRAM1.
Okay.
And you could donate through that link, but they do amazing research and stuff. They don't do the research, they fund the research. So they give the money to the universities, to the different organizations that do this research. And some of the stuff that's coming out is just crazy. They're talking about vaccines for breast cancer, skin cancer, prostate cancer, that they're in clinical trials for. So it's around the corner, and they need supportive people like us to be able to fund that stuff. So if you can do it, that's what I have.
Well, Enrique, it's been a pleasure to take a little virtual drive with you, and I'll look forward to Ohio visit, and we'll find some great place to eat and go from there. So thank you again so much for your time.
No, thank you, Dad. It's been a pleasure. I appreciate what you're doing, and thank you for inviting me.
Have a great day.
You too, my friend. Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of Dan the Road Trip Guy, and we look forward to having you back again next time. In the meantime, if you want to find me, you can find me on the internet at Danny, D-A-N-N-Y, Neal, Neal.com. Until we meet up again, keep having conversations and keep driving.